105. Let's get to Star Wars Episode 7, The Force Awakens. And now, first off, I'm going to be doing the whole trilogy, the sequel trilogy, and then also the standalone films, Rogue One and Solo. And if you're listening to this, I've already made this a compilation bonus episode on our bonus show page, which is filmbuds.bandcamp.com. And so if you want to hear a uninterrupted version of all 5 reviews, you can check it out there. And all funds also go to help support the show, so that's nice. So Star Wars Episode 7 came out in 2015, directed by J.J. Abrams, stars Daisy Ridley, John Boyega, Oscar Isaac, Domhnall Gleeson, Harrison Ford, Mark Hamill, Carrie Fisher, Adam Driver, a few others, or many others really. And the synopsis is, as a new threat to the galaxy rises, Rey, a desert scavenger, and Finn, an ex-stormtrooper, must join Han Solo and Chewbacca to search for the one hope of restoring peace. So, another note real quick, sorry. I am going to be going back and doing the originals and the prequel trilogy, but I figured because of this kind of shorter format, and it's just me, I feel like there's not a whole lot new to say about especially the originals right now in this format. I will eventually, but I felt like if I had started with that, I would basically just be saying, oh, the opening crawl is great. Yoda's cool. How did they manage to make those effects? You know, I feel like I would just be retreading the same thing over and over and over again. And I figured these movies, while yes, they've been talked about a lot, at least they're a little less saturated with conversation and talk. So hopefully that makes sense. I am starting with the sequels, but figured it would be okay. So I remember, of course, like many, when this one came out, it was Star Wars coming back after the disappointment, at least at the time of the prequels, had been, I think, about a decade. And there was huge hype. You know, everyone was pre-ordering tickets, and it was almost like an Avengers movie or something like that. And massive, massive craze. At the time, I liked Star Wars. I wasn't a huge Star Wars head at that point in time, but I am, for the most part now, I really love Star Wars. And didn't really know what to expect. I think I'd seen all of them beforehand, before seeing Force Awakens, but went in fairly blind. Was very excited though. And I've seen it a handful of times, I'd say at least 5 or 6, probably over the years. And I think I like it about the same each time. I liked it a little bit more when I first saw it, mainly I think because of the hype and seeing it with a huge crowd. Everyone loves Star Wars, so it was like, this is the coolest thing ever. And on rewatch, it's still very solid. I think some people really trash on these movies. I don't really get why. I know that they do follow certain similar formulas to the original trilogy and or even in the prequels, but I think for what they are, at least some of them, we'll get to that in a little bit, this one especially, I think is a great comeback where they were able to incorporate new elements and old elements and have it all work fairly well. I think all the new cast members, that's probably my favorite part of the movie. I think Daisy Ridley is awesome. John Boyega, Adam Driver. Like, I think the whole new cast to Star Wars is great, aside from Domhnall Gleeson. I do not like his performance in any of these, and I think he's probably the weakest part of the whole trilogy. Sorry, that's maybe a little mean, but it's true. And talking about even just like getting into the very beginning of the movie, that opening sequence with that firefight, and you meet Kylo Ren. I like Kylo Ren. Some people really hate him, say he's whiny and all that. I think both the writing, the performance, and the design of the character is awesome. I understand that if you call him whiny, he is kind of meant to be, I think, because he's new. He's a young, immature leader and evil leader as well. And so I think for me, that makes sense. I'm not really upset about that, but I think he still has a great presence, and I like his storyline. And they do even make a point in that first scene of making fun of the voice with Oscar Isaac, you know, like they can't understand him, which I like that. You don't need to overdo it, but I think that's a good little point because it is a little over the top. But the origin of Rey, I love her introduction, and she's the scavenger. I like the design, like the costume design, especially for her, is awesome across the board. The rising muffin, that's a little thing where she's eating. I love that. I think BB-8 is a great character. I know that's one that, like, I'm getting a little tired of every Star Wars movie or show has to have some sort of robotic character. I don't always need that, but I think in this, it was fresh enough to where it really worked. And I think the design and the use of that character really works for me. So love BB-8 and her relationship with him. John Williams' score, top notch as always. And I think J.J. Abrams has a great eye. I don't think he's an amazing director. I think he's someone who, if you need something to be accessible, fairly commercial, and inoffensive, he's a good one to pick. But he is someone who, like, if you need to incorporate old elements, new elements, and make something, I guess a reboot is just the best term for it, he's a good guy to do it. But at the same time, he often doesn't really have the ability to elevate it a lot of the time in other ways. But I think this movie, it's well directed, it looks good. The effects, I mean, the budget was massive, of course, so it looks amazing visually. I think the evolving relationship and surprises with Kylo Ren and Rey really work for me. The scene in this where he's using the Force on her and her performance there is great. I think all the action overall is pretty good. I think the best sequence is the lightsaber fight between her and Kylo Ren in the snow towards the end. I think that scene is awesome, and really the best action in the whole trilogy is the lightsaber fights. I'm a sucker for good lightsaber fights because end of the day, the blaster fights and like the space dogfights and stuff, there's only so much you can really do with that. But I feel like for some reason, maybe I'm alone here, but I feel like lightsaber stuff you can really change up in the look and the design and the choreography. So that's a fantastic sequence. The dream sequence with Rey as a kid, I think that's very effective. I love scary, weird, mysterious dream sequences in this, and they have a few of those throughout this whole trilogy. So I think there's a good conceptual confidence and understanding and creation to these, or at least especially to the first one. But getting to some smaller issues, I think on rewatch, even the second time I saw it, it does sort of drag at points because it is very familiar to A New Hope, which intentionally so. But I think it is a little long. It's only like 2+ hours a little bit and some change, but I still think that there are points that drag. And if you know everything, there's not as much of the wow factor. Like, oh, this is Star Wars again. It's now we've had 5 movies, tons of shows. So going back and rewatching it, it's just like every other Star Wars movie in that way. So the freshness is gone. And I think the incorporation of people like Harrison Ford, Carrie Fisher, Mark Hamill, I think all that is effective. And the spoilers here, it's old, so I can do it. The death of Han Solo, some people didn't like that. I didn't really mind it. I think it's sort of meant to be sudden, and then he's just gone because Kylo Ren just threw him away, basically. So I think that sequence between him and Kylo and those reveals are great. So there are a lot of great things that I still really like about it, and I can sort of watch this one easily because I'm like, all right, let's just get reintroduced to Star Wars. I know these characters. It's not too complicated. It's got a lot of action. It's got some emotional beats that hit for me. So I don't think it's in my top, and it's hard to rank them. I don't think it's in my top 5, maybe close to being in top 5, but it is the second best of the 3, in my opinion. And if you are someone who, and let me know in the comments if you're listening to this on YouTube or wherever else, would love to hear your thoughts, good or bad. If you're someone who doesn't like it because it's too, I guess, unoriginal, I can understand that to a degree, but I feel like end of the day, it's all part of the same saga. So it makes sense, at least in some ways, to repeat certain beats. Again, I think that there are points where they do that too much to where I'm like, all right, you could do other things. But I think that's why it's good we have movies such as Rogue One, Solo, and some of the other shows. So holds up fairly well. Not an amazing movie. Not as great as when I first saw it, but still a very enjoyable space opera and one of the better ones over the last 10 years. So that one is a heavy 4 out of 5.